InStitches show. And just like that, it was fall again. And time for chunky sweaters and scarves and shawls. And today we are going to make a really elegant shawl using a fun undulating stripe pattern with Hue Me by Lion Brand. And we'd like to thank Lion Brand Yarns for sponsoring today's video. Hue Me is almost more of a color concept as it is a brand of yarn. So if you're the kind of person who has trouble deciding on yarn color or putting colors together, then the Hue Me line of yarn is perfect for you. No matter which colors you grab, whether you grab 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or all of them and smush them together into a single project, they'll always look nice together. So this entire palette was designed to look beautiful no matter which colors you chose. I opted for an earthy kind of feel because I had fall on the brain, but they've got every color of the rainbow that just sort of fits properly into this palette. I'm also very partial to the juniper and a couple of the shades of blue, so I might have to do another shawl down the road. Another nice thing about the Hue Me yarn is that it's a size 5 bulky, but it's a real bulky, chunky yarn. So any kind of a project like this isn't going to take you forever either. We've added a button to this shawl, making it a little more easy to kind of bundle up around your throat and fasten into place. But of course, you don't have to add a button, and if you've got really pretty shawl clasps, you can use those instead. But the border we're going to add to this shawl, very minimal border, very simple, also doubles rather handily as a buttonhole. So you can do what I've done and fold down the entire top part of the shawl and then button it up to wherever you want to place your button. And I'm just going to undo it for you. So what I've done here is I've buttoned up my shawl. Ah, I love this button. I was really excited about having an opportunity to use it. And I've folded down the entire thing and then buttoned it upside down. So if you're wondering how I did that, that's how I did it. But this is how it looks completely straight out. So no matter how you decide to wear your shawl, those beautiful stripes are going to keep you cozy and elegant looking. So without further ado, let's grab our hooks, grab our yarn, we'll head on over to the craft table and we will stitch up a great big chunky cozy shawl together. In order to make our shawls, we're using Hue Me by Lion Brand. Each of these beautiful balls of yarn is a size 5 bulky weight. It's an acrylic wool blend, and there's about 137 yards or 125 meters per ball. I have 5 balls here, more than enough for my shawl. I'll let you know exactly how much I use right here. And of course, based on the measurements of my shawl, you can decide if you want an extra ball or 2. But 5 should be more than enough for the shawl we're making today. And the 2 colors I've chosen are Spicy and Ozone. You're going to want a pair of scissors, a yarn needle. You might find a measuring tape and some stitch markers are helpful as we work along. The hook we're using is nice and big. It's an 8mm, also known as an L or an 11. It's a nice big hook for nice big stitches. And you're going to want a closer. To keep our shawl neatly tied around our shoulders and not falling off, I'm going to use a nice big button. This is a 2.5-inch wide button, but of course you can use any sort of toggle closure that you want, but we'll get into that with the tutorial. And once you've got all that together, we can get started. We're going to begin with a slip knot, and we're going to chain 60 to begin. Now this pattern is worked back and forth. The width of this piece is actually going to be the part of the shawl that drapes from the top of your shawl down your back. 60 chains will measure around 26 inches or 66 centimeters. If you don't feel that's long enough, or for whatever reason your own gauge is much smaller than mine, you can add another length of 12 chains because this pattern can be worked over any perfect multiple of 12. So we're going for a multiple of 12. No extra turning chains. So 60 to start, unless you want it to be deeper. Once you have 60 chains, or a perfect multiple of 12, take care not to twist them while you're crocheting, although it is fairly easy to see your loops. They should all be flat and facing upright as you work, and with a large hook and thick yarn, it's much easier to see. We're all going to skip the first chain from the hook, find the second, and we're going to be using the top loops along our foundation chain we're just single crocheting. So you're going to single crochet in every single top loop of your foundation chain. Now we're using the top loops and not the top 2 loops because the rest of this pattern will be built into the back loops only of every single stitch. So an undulating pattern all worked into back loops only. So we are going to kick the whole thing off by only using the top loop of our foundation chain row. Single crochet all the way across. At the end of row 1, you should have a nice even row of single crochet all worked into the top loop of your foundation chain. We'll have 59 single crochet altogether. If you're doing a custom number based on a foundation chain that was a perfect multiple of 12, you'll have a perfect multiple of 12 minus 1. That will be your final number for every row going forward. But for the rest of us, 59 stitches is what you should have. Row 2 is just like row 1. We're going to chain 1 and turn. You don't use your turning chains, just ignore them. They're only there to turn the corner. And we're using back loops only for every single one of the rows in this pattern. So the back loop is always the loop that's furthest away from you. So you just grab the top loop there, single crochet, back loop, single crochet, and it's going to create a nice ridged effect across the front of your work. So this little guy here. And it's also going to sort of open up that stitch a bit, and it's going to make your stitches a little loose. You're going to have a little bit more stretch and give to your fabric. So back loops only, single crochet all the way across. You'll still have 59 stitches. At the end of row 2, you'll still have 59 stitches, or if you're using a custom number, your multiple of 12 minus 1. You'll have a nice ridge running across the middle of your fabric. That's the effect of working back loops only. And now we're heading into row 3, which is the fun undulating part of this pattern. So we're going to chain 1 and turn. Again, turning chains don't count as anything. We're just going to ignore them. And here we go. Into the first actual stitch, we're going to single crochet, remember back loops only, and chain 1. Skip a stitch into the next stitch, back loops only, half double crochet, and chain 1. Skip a stitch, next stitch, back loops only, double crochet, and chain 1. Skip a stitch, next stitch, double crochet, chain 1. Skip a stitch, next stitch, half double crochet. Again, remember, it's only ever the back loops for the entire pattern. Chain 1, skip a stitch, next stitch, single crochet, and chain 1. So your little pattern is single crochet, chain 1, skip a stitch, half double crochet, chain 1, skip a stitch, double crochet, chain 1, skip a stitch, double crochet, chain 1, skip a stitch, half double crochet, chain 1, skip a stitch, single crochet, chain 1. And the chain 1 counts as a stitch, and it's reflected down below in the stitch that is skipped. So your little chain 1 creates a space, but it's skipping over top of an actual stitch down below. And you have sort of a bit of a lemon shape that starts. That's what you're going to repeat all the way across. So into the next stitch, or I should say we skip a stitch, because we've chained 1. So if you chain 1, you skip a stitch, and into the next stitch we start all over. Single crochet, chain 1, skip a stitch, half double crochet, chain 1, skip a stitch, double crochet, chain 1, skip a stitch, double crochet, chain 1, skip a stitch, half double crochet, chain 1, skip a stitch, single crochet, and chain 1. If you've chained 1, you skip a stitch. And there's our little undulating pattern now all the way across. Remember, it's back loops only. You're going to repeat that all the way across, and I'll catch up with you at the end. And you get to the end of the row, you're going to work a half double crochet, chain 1, skip a stitch, and then that'll bring you to the very last stitch in the row, and you're just going to single crochet. So the row begins with a single crochet, it ends with a single crochet, and because this little pattern is worked over 12 stitches, but we don't have an extra chain at the end, not part of the pattern anyway, we will be chaining one to turn, but the whole thing ends on a single crochet. So it begins on a single crochet, it ends on a single crochet, and that is our little undulating pattern thus far. Again, because we're working back loops only, we have that pretty little ridge happening, and that's the first open work part of the pattern. The next two rows are just single crochet, so we're going to chain one and turn. Again, we skip the chain one that we turn with, and you're going to use back loops only and single crochet in every single stitch and chain. So don't miss the chains. You're grabbing the top loop or the back loop, the one that's always furthest away from you. And because we're using a big hook and a chunky yarn, this shouldn't be very difficult. But if you get to the odd little sort of chain that gives you a hard time, just let it rest across your thumb and your forefinger and just stick your hook right in between. Make sure you're grabbing the back loop and single crochet. Try not to be too tense or too tight. You want to keep your stitches nice and easy going. You'll have 59 stitches at the end of this row. You're going to chain one, turn, and single crochet, back loops only, all the way back. So you're going to have 2 rows of single crochet, a row of open work, and 2 rows of single crochet. And I'll see you at the end of row 5. At the end of row 5, we'll all have something that looks like this. You've got 2 rows of single crochet, a row of open work, and 2 rows of single crochet. And because we're working back loops only, we've got a really lovely ridged effect happening. And that is 1 full stripe. So we're going to snip our yarn now. If you're not changing colors, don't snip your yarn, but if you're changing colors, snip your yarn. Don't worry about weaving in your tails. We can weave them in later. You can also work over top of them if you want to. And you're going to grab your next color, and we're going to start our second stripe. We're going to take our next color now. We're going to make a slip knot. We're going to join in that last actual stitch. Again, back loops only. And we're going to join with a single crochet. So you're going to lift up that loop. You're treating the slip knot on your hook as a loop, and single crochet. And it just sort of makes the edge of our shawl a little tidier. We're not going to see that knot as much. And you can pull your tails in and work over top of them if you want to, or you can leave them out and weave them in later, whichever is easiest. But now all we're going to do is work 2 rows of single crochet, back loops only, just like the first 2 rows of the pattern. So back loops only, single crochet in every stitch all the way across. You'll have 59 stitches in each row. Don't forget to chain 1 when you turn at the end of this row. So that's 2 rows of single crochet now worked for our second stripe, or this is the even stripe as I'm going to refer to it. Again, back loops only. We have that nice ridge effect going. Now we're going to work the even stripe row of open work. So this is the odd stripe, and that even work starts with a single crochet, but because we want this to end up being a rectangle, we need that undulating shape to even out over the course of the entire thing. So instead of starting with the small part of the sort of undulating wave, we're going to start with the large part of the undulating wave. So we're going to chain 4 to begin, and these chain 4 count as a double crochet chain 1. So they're coming out of this stitch. This stitch is now used by this chain 3, which counts as the double crochet stitch, and the chain 1 is going to be reflected by the stitch we're skipping. So chain 4, turn our work. We are skipping the first stitch because it's already used. Normally we would have, if this was a single crochet row, we'd work right into it, but we're not because it's already used by those 3 chains. We chained 1 for the space, so we're skipping the next stitch, which is right here, which means we then start with the 3rd stitch in from the turning chains. And it's a half double crochet worked into the back loops only. So back loops only, remember, back loops only. Chain 1, skip 1, and single crochet. Chain 1. So we've started in the middle of the wave as opposed to the large part of the wave as opposed to the little part of the wave. So that's how we start. And then the rest of the pattern is very sort of familiar. So you've chained one, skip one, and we start single crochet, chain one, skip one, half double crochet, chain one, skip one, double crochet, chain one, skip one, double crochet, chain one, skip one, half double crochet, chain one, skip one, single crochet, and repeat. Single crochet, chain one, skip one, half double crochet, chain one, skip one, and so on. That little repeating motif is worked over 12 stitches. You should be 18 stitches in so far because we started with the large part of the wave, and then it's going to undulate in the opposite sort of size, so that your big double crochets or your tall bits will be over top of the short single crochets from the even undulating open work a stripe before. So remember, back loops only, and I'll catch up with you at the end of the row. As you're finishing that open row of undulation, when you get to the end, you're going to finish with a half double crochet, chain one, skip one, and a double crochet in the last stitch. So it ends the way it began. A double crochet, which technically these 3 chains are, and a double crochet at the end. So the odd stripe undulation begins and ends with a single crochet. The even stripe undulation begins and ends with a double crochet. So think small, wide, and so on, all the way up. The next 2 rows of this stripe are the same as the other. You chain one, we turn, and we single crochet into the back loops only of every single stitch. So we're back to skipping our little turning chain. It doesn't count as anything, just helps us turn the corner. And we're single crocheting back loops only for the next 2 rows. Don't forget that you're single crocheting into your stitches and your chains. You want to maintain that stitch count of 59 in each row. One thing I want to mention, when you're working that single crochet row back across the even undulation row, so remember this is the one that begins and ends with a double crochet, you want to remember that those 4 turning chains counted as a double crochet chain 1. So technically we want to work a single crochet into 2 of them. So I'm just getting across to the second last stitch, which was the half double crochet, and now I'm looking at those 4 turning chains. 1, 2, 3, 4. Here they are. So 3 of them are double crochet and 1 of them is a chain, which means I need to single crochet into the top loop of 2 of those 4 chains, because 1 of them represents the top of the double crochet and 1 of them is the chain 1 that sat next to it. Now just to be sure, whenever you finish that row, always check you should have 59 single crochet all the way across. And again, you're still using those back loops only, so you've got that lovely ridged effect happening. Then chain 1, turn, work another row of back loops only, single crochet. Oops, spin it the other way here. And that will be it for an even stripe. We'll change colors if you're changing colors, and we'll be back into an odd stripe. At the end of your second row of single crochet on your even undulating stripe, and you should sort of start to see, you can kind of pull open or pull up on the open parts, and you should be able to sort of see that nifty undulating effect happening here. And of course, because we're working the open parts opposite the little tiny parts, ultimately the whole thing is going to even out, but you're going to still have this really neat undulating effect as you wear this. And of course you're going to be wearing it this way, so those undulating stripes are going to be going up and down your body. Now let's talk about length. This is about 5 inches wide, so 2 full stripes will be roughly 5 inches or 12.5 centimeters so far. I'm aiming for 50 inches, a 50-inch long scarf or shawl. Of course, you can make yours longer, but every 2 rows will be roughly 5 inches or 12.5 centimeters. So you want to keep that in mind as you're adding stripes. I'm going to add another 8 stripes in total, and of course each stripe is 5 rows of this little pattern, or 10 rows equals 1 full rotation of the pattern. So at the end of 10 full stripes of color, I should be at roughly 50 inches. But of course this pattern can be made wider or longer, so if you want to keep going after that, you're more than welcome to add more stripes, but I do recommend doing at least 10 stripes and then putting it around your shoulders and kind of getting a feel for it, because remember, we're going to be putting on a fastener at that point. But I'm going to turn you loose now. You can repeat those even stripes or odd stripes and even stripes, remembering that your undulating open rows have to kind of mirror each other, or be sort of the big part is opposite the skinny part of the previous open work. And then every single undulating open row is sandwiched in by its own 2 rows of single crochet. So 2 rows of single crochet, open work, 2 rows of single crochet. Change colors, 2 rows of single crochet, open work, 2 rows of single crochets. Change color, 2 rows, etc., etc., etc. And it's a pretty basic pattern from here on out. So I'm going to change colors, and I'm going to continue on with the pattern, and I'll see you at the end of my 10th stripe. I have completed 19 stripes, or 95 rows of the pattern. So that's 9.5 full repeats of the pattern, which would be 2 stripes is 1 full sort of pattern repeat. So instead of doing 10 full repeats, I've only done 9.5, and I actually could have gotten away with 8, but I wanted to start and finish my shawl with the same color. So I encourage you to keep sort of wrapping it around yourself to make sure that it covers you about 1.5 times. This is quite stretchy, so I'm going to have 50 inches very easily without doing the full 10 pattern repeats. So once again, I've done 95 rows, which is 19 stripes, or 9.5 full pattern repeats, which would be 2 stripes of color. So that's where I'm going to end, and it doesn't matter if you end on an even or an odd stripe, because this over this many stripes, the pattern evens itself out, so you don't have to worry about it being sort of strange along the edges. And to finish off, we are just going to add the most minimalist of border, and we're going to work in a little sort of button space down the first side, and then just finish off the whole thing with just the simplest of borders. We don't really want to make a big deal about the border because we are striping with color, but we do want to just finish off those raw edges a little bit. So you don't have to cut your yarn if you want to use the same color for your border. If you do want to change colors for your border, just fasten off like you normally would, and then grab your other color and join like you normally would if you were adding on another stripe. We're just going to chain 1, turn everything around, there we go, and skip that turning chain. We're going to single crochet in the first stitch. So again, if you were joining a color to make your border a different color, you would join with a single crochet in the first stitch, just like you would if you were changing colors for your stripes. This is where we're going to sort of use, this space is going to be used as our buttonhole. So we're going to chain 3. We're going to skip 3 stitches, and we're going to single crochet into the next stitch, and we're still using back loops only. So this is going to become our little buttonhole, and for the rest of this edge we're going to chain 2, skip 2, and single crochet into the next stitch. So all the way down, chain 2, skip 2, single crochet into the next stitch, and I'll see you down at the bottom. Single crochet, chain 2, skip 2, single crochet will leave you with a single crochet in the last stitch at the bottom of that row. Now we're going to turn and work across the first sort of open edge or uneven edge of our pattern, and it's really, really simple. It's essentially the same thing. You're just going to chain 2 right from where you are, find the open work row edge, and anywhere in there grab a piece of it, single crochet, chain 2, jump across to the edge of the next stripe color, find a piece of it, and single crochet. So it's the same little thing all the way across. Chain 2, find the open work edge, grab a little piece of it, anywhere, any little edge piece, single crochet, chain 2, jump across and grab a piece of the next stripe color. So you're just grabbing a little edge piece of the middle, so that open work row, and always a single crochet in the beginning of the next stitch color. So single crochet, chain 2, single crochet, chain 2, single crochet. And you're just grabbing a little piece of a loop at the top, and that will mimic this back loops only effect down the other sides all the way around the shawl. So chain 2, skip to the open work row, find a loop, any piece of it, anywhere around there, single crochet, chain 2, skip over to the edge of the next color stripe where it begins, try to grab just a loop of it, there we go, single crochet, and so on. So that's our minimalist border all the way across the bottom edge. And now that brings us to the other side, which is the foundation chain row of our project. The last single crochet I've just put right in that first chain of the foundation chain row. And it's the same thing, we're going to mirror the other side. So right from where we are, I'm going to chain 2, I'm going to skip 2 chains, find the next one, and single crochet. So you're only using the top loop of the chain all the way up that foundation chain row. And again, that's going to mimic that single back loop only usage that we've been doing the whole project. And you're going to repeat that. Chain 2, skip 2, single crochet, all the way up to almost the top. And the last thing you're going to do is chain 3, skip 3, single crochet in the top. And I'll show you what that looks like when we get up there. That single crochet, chain 2, skip 2, all the way up the foundation chain row edge until you get to the last few stitches. You're going to single crochet, chain 3, skip 3, and single crochet into the last chain. And this does a couple things. One, it's the same as the other side, and 2, it allows you to use, this is the top. So the top of your shawl has the chain 3 space on either side, and this will allow you to use either one side or the other as the front facing part of your shawl. So when you do wrap it around your body and decide where you want to place your big button later on, you can use either this side or this side. Either way, this is the top part of your shawl. So you've got an option to use one side or the other. And across the top, it's the same as that we did, I should say it's the same that we did across the bottom. So right from where you are, chain 2, jump to the open work row, grab a loop, single crochet, chain 2, jump to the edge of the next stripe of color, grab a loop, single crochet, chain 2, grab a loop in the edge of that open work row, single crochet, chain 2, and so on. And I'll see you back at the other side. At the end of the row, you're going to single crochet into the open work row of the last stripe, chain 2, and find the single crochet you began the border row with, and you're going to slip stitch into the full side of it. So instead of using just back loops only, you're going to slip your hook right through the whole single crochet and join with a slip stitch. That is it for the single crochet. The border is complete. You can fasten off and take a moment to weave in your tail. And you can do that anywhere you want. You just want to sort of wiggle your tail down to that last solid row of single crochet. So I'm just going to poke it through some of these loops. There we go. Careful not to pull that corner out of alignment, and then just weave it through the stitches that are here. Adding a button to your shawl is completely optional, but it is a nice way to add some focal point or a little bit of bling to your project, and it does create a nice built-in clasp. So if you want to just wrap it up around your shoulders or your neck and kind of button it into place, and that allows your arms to be free. But it is optional, and I do recommend that you try your shawl on around your shoulders or around your neck and grab the side that you're going to use as the buttonhole and kind of sort of clasp it here, clasp it there, decide where it is that you think you want the shawl to drape from, and then mark that spot because that's where you're going to put your button. Sewing your button down is very simple. If your button has large holes in it like mine does, you can use your wool needle and some of the matching wool that you use to make your shawl. And all you want to do is sort of come from behind. So I'm just going to reach through this little space in the open work. I'm going to tuck that tail down to the opposite side. And you want to vary the places that you're bringing your needle in and out of. So you don't want to put too much stress on the actual crochet. So try not to make it too tight. I'm going to go down through a different place now. Back out the other side. Here's my needle. Make sure my little tail isn't coming undone. Back through the front. And I'm going to do this about 4 times or until I can't get the needle and thread, or the needle and yarn in this case, through the eyes of this button any longer. Once I've assured that it's not going to go anywhere, I'm going to take my 2 ends on the back of my shawl, tie a knot twice, and then I'm going to weave the little tails in just like I would for any other tail in the crochet project. And if you've got too much tail, you can trim any excess. Button is sewn on, and now it's all ready to wear. And there you go. One very cozy, very elegant, multi-use shawl. I really love that blanket scarf effect, but I like it to drape right over top of my shoulders and my chest to keep me warm. And this is the perfect thing to wear for a walk in the woods or maybe through your local farmer's market. And it definitely says fall to me. We hope you enjoyed making this along with us today, and again, thank you to Lion Brand for sponsoring today's video with Hue Me, and we'll see you soon here on the Jayda InStitches show. Until then, stay safe, stay crafty, and have a wonderful week. Bye guys!
Hi everyone, this is Mama InStitches. Thank you for watching. Here are a few other videos you might enjoy. Don't forget to subscribe, and you can also click the like button and the bell. Thank you, have a wonderful day.